All right. Welcome back to social media campaigns. We are on part two here, and we are looking at the steps that go into creating a social media campaign. And let's start with the before. I mentioned in the last video, unlike a social media strategy, you want to start with the goals and figure out what it is that you're trying to accomplish. The ADAM model from the end of the last video can help you kind of organize this, but usually goals, they don't start with one of these five. These five things are kind of like the result of the goal. So let's say the goal is, hey, we have a new product launching. We sell it on our online store. We need to make some noise about it on social media. How can we do that with a campaign? Then you would look and see, okay, what's the goal here? Do you just want to get um, traffic to the website? Do you want to sell the product? Do you want people to just kind of show their interest and sign up for updates, for a newsletter? What do you want to do? And or do you just want to get it out there for brand awareness? Figuring out that goal up front is going to allow you to then fill in and complete the rest of these steps. Now, the next step is where we look at kind of the big idea. The big idea that resonates with people is, what is this campaign? At its most basic, and I would argue what most of us have done in the past, is just a general theme of posts. They're usually brand awareness. They are just about getting the word out, and you're just looking to get as many people in the know about this as possible. On the other hand, you could get creative. You could do like a quiz or a poll. You could do a caption contest. You could do a legitimate scavenger hunt. Something I do with my undergrad course class every semester is we go through social media campaigns and we do one in class. We kind of do a simulation, and one of them is a scavenger hunt where people are going to look for things in person. And these have become more popular in recent years as the younger generation, Gen Z and soon Gen Alpha, are a little bit more about experiences. And they're always online, they're digital natives, but they like doing things outside too that kind of blends the two together. So they could see things like, oh, here's a bunch of clues that I accumulated from these social media posts. Now I need to go out and find whatever it is, a pair of shoes, a QR code to scan to win, something like that. And that's kind of the idea behind step two, is like, what is it? What is this campaign supposed to be? If you want an idea of kind of like some campaign types, here's a quick list, and also the goals. Let's think about the goals again. If it's, say you want to sign up people for an email, all right, that's one column. Say you want people to sign up for a demo, like an online demo, that's another column. Maybe the result is that you just want as many photos of customers with your product as possible. That would be UGC, user generated content. That's another one. Or maybe it's a follower campaign. You want to get more followers on your social network, which we hadn't really talked about yet, right? That kind of applies across the board. But really, you could split these campaigns into two types. The first two, signups and sweepstakes, those are less about user generated content. It's more about just submitting something online. So you got to think about, the work here is you're doing it on your website. You need to do some work on the back end. The second group, though, those that are based on user generated content, those usually require separate setup through social listening tools. And you might need to assemble social media posts that are created by others, like the user generated content. So, you're looking at where you need to put in the work and actually create something. Now, there's obviously ways that you can combine those, but you want to make sure that your campaign is not too difficult. It's not too convoluted. Because if it is, then it can be tough for people to actually complete the required steps that you have. Now, steps three and four I combined into one slide because I do want to, move kind of quickly on that part. Audience identification is pretty straightforward. We've talked about this at length throughout this course. And you want to be able to figure out, okay, it's not just your whole audience, but what is the subset of your brand's audience that you're really targeting here? Figure out who they are, do the traditional targeting behaviors, and then also you want to figure out the budget and your resources. The big mistake here, most people only look at advertising, and sometimes they look at the tools and software. But you also need to make sure that you're including the employees who are going to be spending time on this, especially if you have a larger organization where people are billing back hours. To capture the true cost, you need to make sure to incorporate their time. It could be a small fraction of a salaried employee, it could be someone working hourly. But in either case, the human capital that's necessary to run a social media campaign, that is the most commonly forgotten expense. And it's something you will need to consider, even if you don't have to officially track it, which a lot of organizations don't bother with that. You want to make sure that that is at least a consideration, because if it's not, that's where you can get burned down the line, and people can say you weren't adequately determining the adequately measuring costs. Now, step 5, you do need the campaign parameters. So these are things like submission instructions, if you use hashtags, personal data collected. You want to determine these before launch. If you don't, you're in kind of deep trouble there, because then you're launching a campaign without the parameters. And if there's ever a time and a place to use AI in a campaign, it's here. You want to ask your preferred AI platform for help. You can ask it for help drafting submission instructions, maybe making sure you don't miss anything. And you want to make sure that you clearly flesh out the criteria if this is a winner selection based campaign. Again, things with winners and those types of things are like, oh, we're going to randomly draw a winner. If you do that, that's a small fraction of social media campaigns in reality. But you need to make sure that that criteria doesn't exclude anybody. You want to make sure it's as tightly knit as possible. Now, you may want to include legal, if you have a legal team in this as well. You want to cover all your bases on this, because if people can poke holes in this campaign, they will, even if it's all in good fun. You just want to make sure that you're covering everything. And that's why I put these 6 here. You don't have to include all of them. And honestly, if you don't have any sort of submission process, then you're really just down to, maybe none of these. It's maybe just like a schedule, but then again, it's not really a super in-depth campaign at that point. Now, step 6. This is our last step before we want to figure out the social networks. This is often something that people do first. It's not. It needs to be the last step before in the planning ahead of time. You need to know your audience. You need to know your goals. You need to know what is going to be happening. What's the budget? All of those need to be known ahead of time. Otherwise, you end up working backwards, and you end up kind of conforming your campaign to your platform, not the other way around. Now, example would be like a user-generated photo contest. For a younger audience, that's probably good for Instagram. But if you have a campaign and the goal is to get people to fill out a lead form, Instagram may not be best, at least from an organic content perspective, because you can't have links in organic posts. It would be fine for ads, sure. But if you're trying to get people to click through organic posts, which isn't always a great idea anyways, but if you are, you probably want to look at other platforms, not Instagram. That's just an example of platform limitations here. Then we have our second phase. This is during the campaign. So this is step 7. This is the one thing, as your campaign goes, and that is just the really the need to be iterative. So, planning is crucial, as we've seen through the first 6 steps, but so too is the running of your campaign. This phase is squeezed into a single slide, but there's 3 parts to handle. Okay, first you want to confirm your results. That is where people submit or otherwise complete a conversion as part of the campaign. From there, you need to make sure they're doing it all correctly. They need to be submitting the details. They need to include, what they need to include in a user generated photo, things like that. But then from there, if the conversion action is something like subscribing to an email list, you need to make sure that you're correctly registering those and measuring them. If not, you're really screwed if you go through an entire campaign and you realize, oh, I didn't actually collect anybody's email address. Then it's all for naught. Number two, you really got to be able to communicate. If people are asking questions about the campaign or product or brand or anything, this is that time to use the brand account, look human, respond in an honest way. This usually happens in the comments of posts, but if not, you can also, you'll probably get some DMs as well. Finally, you want to be able to report and analyze. This is important both during and after, and especially during longer campaigns. You need to be able to monitor how campaigns progressing, project final results, and you can straight line project results. But most campaigns begin projecting about a quarter of the way through, and then they extrapolate. But keep in mind, depending on how your brand works and how your audience is, it's not usually a linear thing. A campaign is usually front loaded or back loaded, either right when it goes live or right before the deadline, just because of how people use social media and how they've been looking at the content. So you want to think about how fast information moves on social media and figure out, hey, when is your campaign going to do best? But straight line projecting, it might be the only option, and that's okay, but just be mindful of its limitations. Last point after the campaign. So you want to turn these results into momentum. And there's, again, just give you a list. There's 4 things to do here if you want to capitalize on your hopeful success, right? First, you want to announce the winner publicly. If you don't have a winner, which again, many campaigns don't, you need to be sure to announce your own internal wins. Like how many submissions did you get? How many sales? Anything else that can help build brand equity and make people think, wow, like they know what they're doing. Number 2, you need to amplify the story. The more you can announce in different ways, the more people you'll reach after the campaign ends. It's kind of like I remember hearing something in middle school home economics class that after the microwave is off, the food cooks another 20% or something, which is, or I guess to put it plainly, food in a microwave cooks 20% after it's over, which is bizarre. I don't really get it. But it's kind of like this. You need to take advantage of after the actual work is done and go through and amplify it further, because you'll be able to reach another 20% of those people. From there, don't just announce the sales. So you want to say, okay, don't just announce the sales from your product, maybe a press release, maybe something that talks about the impact. What does it mean for the company long term? You talk about what comes next. There's a story to be told here, and you don't just want to give straight numbers, although that's okay too. Number 3, you need to follow up with people. If you collected contact information, reach out to them, give them a thanks, and make sure you responded to all the questions that came out on social. And then 4th, report and analyze. This is where you can kind of be braggadocious, determine how successful it was. Did you meet the goals from the first step? Were there other happy accidents? There are positive externalities that could have occurred as the result. So maybe your follower count doubled. Maybe you've seen a bunch of engagements on posts that weren't part of the campaign. There's likely going to be related things that occur for better or worse, and you want to make sure that you measure those as well. And all of these together, right, over all these 8 steps that I kind of rushed through, the takeaway here is that a campaign is a system from start to finish. It's not a post, and it's not just a series of posts. You want a theme. There's a lot of planning that goes into it, but also you need to constantly be feeding this thing and updating it as time goes. But make sure to also close the loop at the end, because a campaign has a lot of opportunities. And the number one thing that people miss, that inexperienced social media people miss, is they don't know how to tell their story after the fact. So if you can do that, in addition to all those other things and planning and during the campaign, then you will have a successful social media campaign, and you'll be in a good position to extend your upward mobility within the company that you work for. And that is all for today. That concludes social media campaigns. I'll be looking forward to my last piece here on this course, and that's going to be all about analytics.